Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Scholar Chit Chats, and I'm your host for this episode, OJ. Today, we have a fascinating topic to dive into, and it's going to be on balancing academic pursuits with financial demands while in grad school. And we have a very special guest today to help us explore this. So, our guest today is Mr. David Michael. Mr. David Michael is someone I've come to know over the couple of years and work closely with. He completed a master's in human molecular genetics at the Imperial College London on a fully funded Commonwealth Master's Scholarship. He graduated with a distinction, so this is like someone who knows his stuff academically, and is currently working as a research assistant at the University of Oxford, where he will be starting a DPhil in clinical medicine with the Ludwig Institute of Cancer Research later this year. So yeah, you want to listen to this person, right? So in today's episode, we'll be discussing his experiences and his insights on whether to study full-time or to take part-time work, and what factors influence that decision, and what that means, etc. So all your money versus study questions, we'll try to answer those. So welcome, David. It's great to have you with us this evening, today.
I'm so pleased to be here, OJ. I'm excited and I'm more than happy to share my experiences on this topic.
Thank you. So to start, we are going to start with the first question of just like getting to know about how study at the Imperial College London was. So how was your experience there, and how did you like manage your academic and financial responsibilities during your master's program?
Yeah, of course. My master's program at Imperial College was actually intense, I must be honest. And I was genuinely fortunate to be on a scholarship, which of course that allowed me to focus more on my studies and only work based on need, as it were, right? So I think this was crucial actually for achieving a distinction and making the most out of my academic opportunities, because I know a number of friends that would be forced to work because they actually need to meet up the living expenses and the cost of their tuition, but that wasn't it for me. And so the scholarship really allowed me focus largely on my studies, which was really intense, as I said earlier, and eventually graduated with the result that I graduated with. So thanks to Commonwealth Master Scholarship.
Yeah, thanks to Commonwealth. Yeah, I can actually relate, because being on the same scholarship, and also I think participating in an intense program, I can relate to like how just not having that pressure of like thinking about finances is a very, very big relief, right? It helps you focus on what you should actually be focusing on. I think my question is based on like you made a statement where you said like you only had to work. I think you said based on needs. I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but like what were the instances that made you actually like work?
Okay, so London is a very expensive city, and largely the most expensive city in the United Kingdom. Yeah. I think that still stands to be true. So definitely, as much as I had a stipend from the Commonwealth Master Scholarship funding body, that was just enough to come by. So it was just enough to allow me to sort out my accommodation expenses, my feeding, my transportation costs, and little peripheral costs here and there. But coming from Africa, trust me, we know there are other financial responsibilities that we might need to shoulder from family, from friends, and all of those other things. So I saw the need genuinely to make extra earning for myself besides my stipend. So yeah, I think it was largely because I had to augment my funding to be able to cater for some family needs here, and also have significant savings for myself, because I think it's also important when you start out on a program like this, you want to be able to plan your time through your studies and even after. Because one thing that was clear to me was by the time I'm done with my program, I will most likely want to attempt a post-study visa, right? And that will cost like £2,000 to £3,000. So putting all of those things into perspective, I think it was really necessary for me to work occasionally to be able to supplement these needs.
Yeah, I really like the points that you've drawn out, and I think it's something that a lot of people who have gone through graduate study can actually relate with. One, black tax. So like your responsibilities to your family back home, and also like even your friends, colleagues would make demands of you just because you're in a better place, or like you're apparently in a better place, even though, as you said, the stipend is not that much. Like it's just, as I said, enough to live. Like you're enough to live. They don't expect you to have any savings. They don't expect you to like flex much. And in fact, the reason why you can even have anything extra is because a lot of us immigrant students don't actually flex. Like we don't go and drink. We
Oh,
don't.
yeah,
You
very
don't
true.
necessarily have a social life outside of studying. Like you just read very hard and eat food and sleep and just live like one kind of triangular life. And I think the second point you made is also something that, regardless of status, like of migration status, everybody has to think about. Like you have to think about your future. You have to think about like what next, and as you say, plan for like maybe visa or settlement costs that would crop up as well. So very, very like important points that you've raised. So I think I was also curious about like at what point did you like how did you like manage your time to
Yeah.
actually be able to fit in
My work
work?
schedule, right? Yeah, very,
Yeah,
very.
yeah.
I think it's important when you start out in a program like this that you spend the first month or two understanding how rigorous the academic curriculum will be, so that you could factor out times within your academic schedule to be able to take on extra shifts. So for me, one of the things that I actually did was as much as possible, I attempted to look for jobs that were relevant to my field, or to some extent would also demand me utilizing my mind rather than my physical energy, right? So for instance, I signed up as a student ambassador and an outreach leader at my university. Occasionally those shifts actually come very rarely, but for instance, doing open day events, we actually worked with the remaining I think some other student recruitment bodies to organize the event, lead parents, show them different parts of the department. We also organized outreach programs where we talked about STEM and career opportunities at Imperial. But we did that in different secondary schools within the United Kingdom, actually, particularly in London, right? So those were some other things that I did. I also signed up for like tutoring engagements, and those ones were quite flexible because I could do them online. But more so, and to add this, I actually also signed up with, I think then there was this Indeed Flex app. It was very useful. Now I think people are having a lot of challenge actually getting relevant shifts there. But I also signed up with Indeed Flex as an event waiter and all of that. But I only made sure I worked when I knew my academic calendar could permit it. So every student should be able to assess how much capacity they have and how much they will be able to, they should be able to pace themselves in such a way that their academics will not suffer because they're trying to get extra shifts, right? And this is me speaking because I feel like, okay, let's say you have a scholarship, but if you don't actually, you really don't have so much of a choice. Your academics might actually suffer a bit because those funds are a necessity to survive. Yeah, so for me, just to wrap up what I've just said, once I got an understanding, hands-on on my academic curriculum, I was able to figure out times I could work. For instance, most of my Indeed shifts where I had to go do event waiting because I was a waiter in that particular role was mostly weekends. I did it mostly weekends or from Friday evenings, as it were. Those ones were out of hours as long as academics was concerned. It only entered into my personal studies, of course, which I would find ways to make up some other time, right? But those other academic engagement, like being a student ambassador or a tutor, some of those ones are very flexible, and sometimes even during the week I could ship them in when I don't have classes. So I think majorly it's just about time management, understanding your academic curriculum, knowing the capacity that you have, and being able to pace yourself effectively around this schedule.
Very, very many valid and valuable points that you've made in just this short time. So I think my experience also kind of mirrors yours. So for me, I also did like the student ambassadorship thing, which was really nice because it was also paid. So that's kind of, and it was, as I said, it gives you, it's a flexible work experience. So you get to choose the opportunities that you're available for. So if it's clashing with something important, like maybe a school, or you have a pending deadline that you really have to like work hard on, it's possible to like skip and then pick up the ones that you are free or more available for. And again, it's like it's something you can put on your CV, like really, like I can still put it up till now on my CV because like it shows like you have like public engagement, science communication. So those are very, very valuable. And then you talked about tutoring as well. That was also really, really good. And I liked the part where and of course, like all those, the ones you can also put on your CV, like when you need to do them, you actually should do them. Because I worked with it was in Burger King, so I know how to make good burgers. So I worked with Burger King. But as I said, like it was after assessment, so I didn't work at all in my first semester. So we resumed in October, and I didn't work at all when I was being taught. So I only started doing any work when I started my project because there was no classes. So I was like, okay, I'm able to. My project was also computer based, so I could do it from anywhere. So I was like, yeah, my time is like my own. I know my targets, so I can do whatever I want with my time, and then I was able to fit in working there. And I remember telling all the people that came for like after me on the Commonwealth Scholarship in my course, I'm telling them, oh, you can't work. And truly, I know that the guy that came after me did not work at all. He couldn't even work during his masters at all, even during his project. He didn't even work. And to be fair, now when I think about my master's experience in retrospect, I feel like that was like one big mistake I made, to be very honest. I don't know why I did that work.
Like funny enough, sorry to cut you, OJ, just to come in actually quickly.
Sure.
Funny enough, for me, I felt like I was freer doing my coursework than doing my project. So my project was quite more intense for those of us, for instance, in sciences that do more wet lab work. You literally have to show up most times in the lab like almost Monday to Friday, right? So I spent more time actually doing my coursework, actually working, and then doing my project. Of course, most of the shifts that I actually took on were not based on weekend. So it varies. I think like you just pointed out, it's more about understanding your academic schedule and knowing where you could be flexible enough to chip in those shifts, you understand?
For me, I still think about it like, oh, I just wasted my time. To be fair, I used that money for my study visa application. But like, I still felt like, oh my God, why did I do that work? Because it was stressful. To be honest, like it took me a long time to recover from that stress of just like, because I was almost working around the clock, because I was like, oh, I don't like, my work was not bounded by the lab, for instance. So I could be working overnight, then go for the shift, then come and do my project. So I was just working without boundaries. Like I was just flowing in life, like no regard for time. But anyway, personal assessment, as you said, very important. You have to know yourself. So again, I think both of us would agree on the advice that don't come into the program thinking that, oh, I'm going to start working tomorrow. Give yourself some time to know what is up, what is happening. 1 or 2 months, I think, at the very least, because when you enter, your eye may open that it's not as I expected though. So that's very, very and again, as you said, people on scholarships, your academic is definitely a priority. If someone is self-sponsored, like you cannot really say maybe academics is a priority, because like you have to balance academic and living. But if you're on a scholarship, your living is actually already covered. You're trying to like make savings or contribute to other people's life, right? All those things, you can't place them as a priority, really, you can't. So like very, very interesting points that I think everybody should take note of. So I think one thing I would like to ask is how you manage budgeting your finances. So you've brought up the fact that London is a very expensive city. It is a very expensive city. How did you manage your money as a master's student?
Very, very key, right? I think first of all, money management or finance management is largely, should I say, it varies with the individual. There's some people that naturally have a savings culture, and it flows even in their living conditions in the United Kingdom, right? But there's some people actually they genuinely struggle with saving. So I feel like if you are that kind of person that genuinely struggle with saving, generally you would also struggle even in the UK making savings, because you always see the need to spend. It's all about how you manage your finances. So to just speak concerning myself in this particular regard, just before I do that, I just want to add this. There are inexpensive ways to have fun, right? So for instance, not all social engagements always require you to have money. You don't always have to go to the pubs or go to the club or do some of those things that will make you spend heavily. You could plan that occasionally, maybe once in a month or once in 3 months per se, just to go for sightseeing and all of that. But for me, there are other ways. So for instance, I'm a Christian, obviously, so I hang out with most of my friends in church, and sometimes we hold like midweek engagements, not necessarily service per se, where we just meet and then we chat. You could also join, like, there are a lot of social activities in school. Those ones are very, very inexpensive. You could join gym sessions, you could join like African society, depending on what you want, right? You could even join a tennis club, go for swimming. So there are robust social activities within the academic system that even can allow you to enjoy fun, meet new people without excessively spending per se. So for me, it's all about budgeting, right? So every month I knew what I was going to spend for feeding, I knew what I was going to spend for transportation. My accommodation took like 60% of my rent, of my stipend, actually, because London was very expensive. So for instance, no need to just hide it. So let's say I was earning like 1,300, I was paying like 750 to almost 800 pounds just for accommodation. And that was it because I really wanted to stay close to school so that I could minimize the cost on transportation, right? So some people would rather stay far and then spend the money on transportation because the accommodation is cheaper. So it depends on what you want, but I really wanted to stay close. So knowing that accommodation was out, I capped my feeding at a specific amount of money, even though though sometimes it exceeded that. Then the next major thing was transportation and all of that. So apart from that, I don't think there was so much. I wasn't living a very flashy lifestyle in the UK. I wasn't buying so much clothes. I think the only major thing that I really invested lots of my stipend on was getting good gadgets. I planned that when I came into the UK, I was going to get a good iPhone and a good MacBook Pro. So those are things that I felt like it was an investment into my education, which is something I'm even using to date, right? So you see, it actually benefited me long term. So I think once you understand what your lifestyle habits are, you can budget around that, and as much as possible, live a life in moderation. Just to add this, I know most of us sometimes from Africa, sometimes we have a tendency to want to feel like, oh, if you are wealthy or you have money, you want to show it in your clothes, you want to show it in your shoes. Trust me, you will come here and you see your professors that you know are heavyweights in the field, and they're just wearing one shoe all the while, throughout their stay, throughout the time you see them, it's just one shoe there. Because the truth is, they understand that real wealth is not really, you don't have to show it in what you are wearing, right? And people have different priorities. So for me, it's all about understanding your priorities and living a life in moderation, and understanding your your lifestyle habit and budgeting around that. But I think it's also important that no matter what, you always have a budget allocated for savings.
A lot of valuable points. I'm going to recap a lot, but I think one thing that you said that I would really a number of things I said I really want to emphasize is, one, you have to know yourself. It varies with individuals. So if you're not prone to saving, you want to actually take a very, very conscious and deliberate step to actually start saving. Because otherwise, like, you would just, it would not go well if you don't have any savings. And then, of course, you mentioned how you can live within your budget, and how there are a lot of fun activities that you can do without spending too much money. And that is like something that everybody has to like really, really like focus on. I think that's one thing that even with the UK culture kind of encourages. So like, if they're saying, oh, let's go to the pub every Friday, and it's like, you only have 1 month, you just tell them, sorry, I can't go. To be honest, I think I mean, first of all, I did not even drink. But again, I understood that going to the pub was a socializing kind of concept. So it kind of opened my mind to it. And I usually go there and be like, oh, just give me the lemonade. And I'm just saying, or give me Coke. Although those Cokes and lemonades in those pubs used to be very expensive. This is more expensive than regular ones. I'm like, oh yeah, for the experience, right? So but like once I just had to caution myself, like, okay, let me not just always say no, so that they don't be like, oh, let's not invite this girl, or she's not interested in hanging. So I was like once in a month, I just be like, okay, sure, why not? And I'll just go and buy this. And even if you say no, nobody's like frowning on you. There's not this expectation that everybody has to be bonded together and we have to do everything together. And if you say no, you're an enemy. No, that's not the mindset. So yeah, you have to be prudent with your savings. And when you're talking about the accommodation versus transport thing, for London, I don't even think that there is actually that's a cost-effective way, really. Like, at the end of the day, you're either trying to say, oh, you're paying 650 because you said 750, 800, and I feel like that's kind of like a very good range of rent, at least in that time. I'm sure it's way more expensive now, actually. But okay, maybe you're then not spending a lot on transport. But if you go last with your 750, 800, so maybe altogether with transport, maybe you're spending 900. That's probably a very high amount. But if somebody goes and lives very far away, it's about the same thing. The person will spend a lot of money, especially if the person has to come to school every day. And time. Exactly. Oh my God. Because you just realize that, oh my God, I'd rather just be able to walk home in 5 minutes than to sit on the train for 30 minutes and just not be able to study. So those are things that you have to like consider in money. Don't be like penny wise and pound foolish. So I think one other interesting question I would like to ask is what did you like have any unexpected expenses or like financial stress during your master's degree?
Talking about unexpected expenses, trust me, some of the needs that come from home were many of the time not expected. And sometimes the way we do this was, I'll be like, okay, let's say I meet this need this month, next month I will save. Let's say, and the funny thing is, every month comes with unexpected challenge, right? That would always demand your finances. And so if you live with the mindset of always deferring savings till later, you might never really make it. And that's why I started off by saying that I think sometimes it's important that when people bring unexpected needs, because trust me, those are the things you can't actually anticipate and plan for. Some of the ones coming from family and friends from back home, those were like 90 to 100% of all the unexpected needs that I had. But this is something that I realized, and I think one of the things that my mentor really did to help me in this area was that, see, I'm going to say this, and some people might say, oh, you are wicked, but this is the point. He said, David, apart from your immediate family, let's say when you have your wife and children, I know, yes, some people have like caring responsibilities back at home. Maybe we can add that to the list, right? You have a junior one that you must train through school. Say, apart from some of those responsibilities, you are nobody's last financial resort. And the truth is, sometimes learning to say no to people, you give them other possible options that they can start thinking of. You understand? You don't help people all the time when they come with their financial need, and the next thing you give them money. Some of them abuse you. I remember one time where there was a guy that was like, he really needs money to do one or two things. He didn't really specify, and I gave him like 10K. The guy didn't say thank you. He didn't come back to even say. I was not asking. Like, I think probably he expected something way more. After all, you're in the UK, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. And at the end, the guy didn't really appreciate it, and I was like, wow. Yeah, 10K could have been small, but you didn't know what my financial situation was at that time when I gave you 10K, right? So the bottom line is this. Another strategy that I also use to manage some of those unexpected needs is this. Don't feel obligated that you have to meet the full financial ask of people. Somebody could be coming with a 100K need or 400K need. Sometimes giving them a token of 20K or 50K is enough to let them know you care. And use that to make a statement of, oh, probably I don't really have much and I really need to budget myself effectively, right? So those were ways. And that's where sometimes some of these extra shifts that we took really did help. But yeah, I think this was some of this mindset that I had around some of those needs. Of course, there are some needs that are very urgent that you might not be able to wait on. But this is, again, I just want to end with this point, just in case you missed it. You are nobody's last hope of survival. Trust me, you are not. You should, and we should not attempt to play God in people's life. Not even our family. Sometimes. Sometimes all you should do is give them what you can and just go pray for them and trust God to open other financial resources for them. Because sometimes saying no helps them to open up their mind to other possible financial options they had. It's just that because you are closest to them, you will always be their first financial resort. But take note, you are nobody's last financial hope.
I feel like I should be giving you like a standing ovation, like you kind of know this thing, like you gave a well-rounded and comprehensive answer. I think I like the point where you said you should not attempt to play God. Like, you're not a savior. Like, you're nobody's savior. Like, of course, there's exceptions to this. There are people that have like caring responsibilities. You have your immediate family. Those are like your responsibility. You cannot outsource those to anybody. And I think as well, within reason, like they should also be reasonable. You shouldn't be. True. I mean, anybody, like people should have like grateful people around them, right? So if there are people that they are completely responsible for, they would be grateful for what you do for them and not place unnecessary burden or demand on you, like just the average level of demand. But all those ones, like the guy of the 10K, I know there are a lot of people like that, and it kind of just amazes me. Like, as we said, you don't even know a person's situation. I remember there was a time, actually, shortly after I moved to the UK, a couple of, I think December, or when I was still settling, there was a time when I finished doing everything, I just had £50 in my account. £50, and it was like the middle of the month. I had like 2 weeks to go. I had to borrow money, and somebody would have asked me for stuff and would have been worried that I did not give the person more than 10K. Like in that instance, I don't even know what to say. But yeah, that entitlement is something that people should read themselves of. But I believe that's been a very, very interesting session, and we're coming to the end of it now. So I'll say, okay, I have one last question for you to wrap up. And I was looking back, is there anything you would have done differently in terms of managing your finances? Or if there is not, is there something that you would really, really like to emphasize for prospective students on what they can do to prepare themselves to manage their money well?
Yeah, I think that's quite key. To be honest, I think so far I'm kind of impressed with the way I managed my finance and my academics. Of course, of course, by the grace of God, of course, I'm a believer. I still eventually made about the best result during my master's, and I did shift. Like, I literally started my first shift after 2 months. Although I was immediately knocked down by COVID, and I didn't work again till like January the next year. So, I think I kind of had this in mind, and I think it's something you should have in mind, no matter how much you earn for living expenses. I think it's important that, besides even for the purpose of the money, the exposure and the experience you get working in a UK-based system is also an additional advantage why I think this is possible. So, for instance, being an event waiter with Indeed Flex, for instance, allowed me, I entered hotels and restaurants that I would probably never attend in my life if not for those shifts. And I saw things differently. I saw the way people hold events. There were some places I entered and they were like, oh, this particular hall is made of gold, and then there are celebrities that come here. Like the exposure, seeing how the system works from a different perspective was also impactful. You understand? So I think that there's also a lot to learn by giving yourself to some of this work, right? And for instance, considering the fact that I was also a student ambassador, I participated in teaching secondary school students across different secondary schools in London. All of those things it also came with a certain level of fulfillment. I was actually engaging the public effectively and being a blessing or impacting somebody else's life out there, right? So I think it's something you should honestly consider, no matter how wealthy you are or how much money you get from your living stipend. I think it's an experience worth having, and not just for the purpose of making money. And yes, give the best you can to your academic work. Do not sacrifice your academic engagement for the purpose of making money. And as much as you can, even if you are self-funded, do the best you can to get the best out of your academics while taking up those extra hours in shifts. Yeah, I wish all of you the best. For those of you that will be coming to study, I hope you find your own balance, just as we found a way to do.
Thank you so much, Dave. Like, thank you so much for that, for those last points that you raised. And I think, I truly agree with you, because for me, working at Burger King was really nice. I remember the most memorable event for me was actually on one of my co-workers' last day at the work. She then revealed that she was actually a millionaire. For real, she was actually a millionaire. Her parents are multi-millionaires. They were not UK-based multi-millionaire. She was an international student that came, and she was young and she already had her million because she was already busy, but she was still doing that. So that's like nodding to your point of exposure, and most likely exposure, because when I had the conversation, she was talking about like she just wanted to do it because although her parents were business owners and she herself owned the business, but like she just wanted to do it for exposure's sake. So there is that as well. And you talked about fulfillment on one hand. So I think those two things are like very, very important points. I think one thing I would like to stress in terms of like also like giving your academics very, very due good attention in the midst of all this is the fact that whatever money you make in those side gigs is probably not the most money you're ever going to make.
Yeah, true.
If there's one thing that probably there are probably very few jobs that you can do part-time that would really like boost your skill sets to a point where going forward you increase your earnings. However, your academics is more likely to set you up to earn more in the future, especially if you're doing a course that you've chosen well and has good career prospects. So you should that and not sacrifice like a future of course people say you don't have, and it's not just about grades. It's about giving yourself the educational experience and picking up valuable skills that may not even be taught in class. So not just because I'm out of class, I would then just go and work for the money rather than building skills. No, I'm not just talking about the grades. Like, make sure that during your educational pursuit, you're building up the skills that can set you up for a higher paying job at the end of the day. So for me, I think that's where we would end today. So I want to say thank you, David, for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with us. And you've given us a lot to think about. So very, very thank you so much. And I would also like to say thank you to every listener. Thank you everybody for tuning in. You can always reach out to scholarchitchat@gmail.com if you have any questions for us or something like for us to talk about. And I think David's inbox may be open on LinkedIn or something. If you have more questions, you can also reach out to him. But I would say until next time, keep striving towards your academic goals and stay curious. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Scholar Chit Chat. If you found our conversation insightful and enjoyable, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to stay updated. We've got a lot more in store and we don't want you to miss out.
We are always diving into topics like this: academics, scholarship, professional life, and the international student experience. It's what makes Scholar Chit Chat your go-to podcast for a fresh perspective. Also, don't keep all this wisdom to yourself. Share this episode with your friends and family who could benefit from it. We are building a community of learners and would love for you to be a part of it.
Your thoughts matter to us. We want to hear from you. Drop your comments and questions in the chat, or send your questions, suggestions, and comments to scholarchitchat@gmail.com. Your input helps shape the future of Scholar Chit Chat.